With the logic games section likely changing next year, a lot of folks are wondering, will the new logic games be harder, easier, somewhere in the middle? I'll share my thoughts. Hey, what's up everybody? Steve Schwartz here from LSAT Unplugged, joining you today to share my thoughts on what the new LSAT logic game section might look like and how you can best prepare. Before I get into it, a little bit about LSAT Unplugged. We offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. Check out the links below this video to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd love to help you out. So I got this great comment on one of my YouTube videos a couple days back, wanted to read it out for you here, then share my thoughts. The commenter writes, "Thanks for the updates. The logic games have always been my weakest section, and it sounds like the newer logic games will simply be easier. Being that creating a fitting diagram and splitting the game boards is essentially the most difficult part of LG, in my opinion at least." So a couple thoughts here, wanted to break them down. First, the commenter writes, "The logic games have always been my weakest section." That to me right there is a little bit of a red flag, to be honest, because logic games are the most learnable and perfectible section of the test. And so if they are currently your weakest section, you've got some great low-hanging fruit you can work on. I would recommend, of course, watching all my videos on logic games. I have many old videos from over 10 years ago where I created comprehensive, thorough explanations for free here on YouTube covering the vast majority of logic games. And of course, there's much more on logic games in my courses. Now, the next comment here, the newer logic games will simply be easier. That is actually not what I was suggesting. To backtrack a little bit for those who aren't aware, the logic game section will likely change middle of next year. I predict July 2024 because of a lawsuit in which a blind test taker sued LSAC, contending he was at an unfair disadvantage because he could not benefit from diagramming the way that other test takers can. And so LSAC agreed to develop a new version of the test without the current logic game section. Now, presumably, the new logic games replacement will not be as susceptible to diagramming as the current game section is. That, however, does not necessarily mean that the new logic games will be easier. In fact, if they are less susceptible to diagramming and diagramming is less useful, they may well be harder. We simply do not know a whole lot. There were a couple of experimental sections testing out what the new logic games might look like back in June 2022, November 2022, and then there was a field study in December 2022. Note that the field study logic games are not the same as the released section of logic games from December 2022. Those are two different sections of logic games. The experimentals have never actually been released, and they presumably will not be released, at least not for several months. So we don't really know what they're going to look like. All we can say is that they likely will not be as prone to diagramming, and diagramming will not help you as much. Now, the fact that creating a fitting diagram and splitting the games boards is the most difficult part of LG for this commenter is not surprising, given that logic games are this commenter's weakest section. So my point being here is that if you were good at diagramming and good at splitting the game boards, you would be a lot better at logic games. And so you already know exactly what you need to work on logic games. If you can improve your diagramming skills, improve your ability to create multiple main diagrams and create inferences up front, games will become a whole lot easier. Now, given that current games are prone to diagramming, I would recommend, of course, that you do the vast majority of games ever released. There's absolutely no reason not to score perfect on the game section, given that you have nearly 400 released logic games to study from and practice from. Of course, there will be significantly fewer games of the new type when that new type comes out, presumably next year. LSAC will release some samples well in advance of the change, but there will not be 400 of those samples. So of course, you're better off taking the LSAT with the current version of the game section than whatever the new version of the games will be. Regardless of whether you're taking it prior to the change or after the change, studying current logic games will be useful, and the new games will presumably be somewhat related to the old games, but the current game section is, of course, a lot more similar to the study material that you currently have than whatever the new version will be. So if you can, aim to be done with the LSAT before the new games come out, which I expect again will be in July 2024, although LSAC has not announced anything yet. Anyway, folks, that's all for now. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to see it. Maybe you know someone aiming to take the LSAT sometime next year. Share this video with them so they know why they should take it and be done with it before the games section changes. I don't do any advertising for the channel. I only rely on word of mouth, and your sharing this video makes a big difference in getting the word out. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.